Wit and Humour. The Dear Departed, Part 1. The story exposes the sad fact that humans often become dehumanized in the face of greed and minor material gains. It shows how love, compassion, and respect is being swallowed by greed in the society. The story of the play begins with Mrs. Slater. She is a greedy woman. Mrs. Slater wants to steal 3 things of her father, that is, her father's new slippers, valuable clock, and a bureau before Elizabeth and her husband comes. Mrs. Slater asks her husband to wear her father's new slippers and bring a valuable cloak down. She is sure that the Jordans has no idea about the bureau as they have made their last visit before the bureau is brought. She does not want her sister to have a share of the bureau. She decides to shift the bureau from her father's room before the arrival of the Jordans because she thinks that Mrs. Jordan will take that bureau as her share of her father's property. Henry wonders at the idea of Mrs. Slater and says that he cannot help her to carry it as the bureau is strong and heavy, and he doubts whether the Jordan will come while he and his wife are shifting the bureau from the old man's room. He suggests her to settle the matter with Elizabeth. After all arrangements and shifting, her sister Mrs. Jordan and her husband Ben Jordan enter the home from Mr. Abel's mourning. Both the sisters kisses each other and Ben shakes hands. They talked about his paying the premium. Mr. Ben appreciated his father-in-law by saying that it is a good thing the father-in-law has paid the premium of the insurance policy. When he knows the fact that the father-in-law has not paid the premium, he changes his opinion and says that the father-in-law is a drunken old beggar. It reveals the fact that he has love for the property of the father-in-law but not the father-in-law. After tea, they want to talk about the announcement of the old man's death and announce their obituary towards the old man's death in the paper. They want to list out the old man's things. Mrs. Slater tells Victoria to run upstairs and fetch the launch of keys on her grandpa's dressing table. Victoria returns very scared and tells that Grandpa is getting. They are transfixed with amazement. The Dear Departed, Part 2. Since his wife's death, Abel has been living part of the time with Emily and part with Elizabeth for their father. According to the new will, he will give his property to whomever he is living with when he dies. Mrs. Jordan wants her father to live with them as Abel has told that all his things will go to the one with whom he will be living at the time of his death. Both the daughters started dividing his things when he is not dead. They did not care for him. They only want to own his things, so he does not want to live with either of his daughters. Both the sisters are greedy, selfish, and unscrupulous. They don't have any love and affection for their father. Abel wants to go to the lawyer to change his will. He wants to go to the church to get married. Abel goes to the insurance office to pay the insurance premium. Mrs. Slater says this, "No, I don't agree with it." As the two daughters don't have any love and affection for their father, he wants to get married. On Monday, Abel wants to do three things. They are: go to the lawyer to change his will, go to the insurance office to pay the premium, go to St. Philip's Church to get married. When they realized that grandfather was alive and was going to alter his will, they quarreled in front of him. After discouraging the truth, grandfather became very bitter because he felt that his daughters did not even wait for his funeral to start dividing things between them. Both the families neglect their duties and responsibilities towards their father. As soon as they think he is dead, they started fighting over his assets. The Jordans who visit them are no better. The news about the death of their father leaves them unperturbed. They are more interested in having tea and discussing about the obituary note. Mrs. Jordan also insists on making a list of her father's assets so that they can divide it among themselves. In the last scene, the grandfather decides to marry widow Shorrocks at St. Philip's Church. Abel found fault with the two daughters and wanted to change his will. He thanks his daughter Emily for bringing the bureau downstairs, as it will be handier to carry it across to the ring o' bells. The ivory in this play, money is the dear to both the sisters, but the truth revealed in front of Abel, the money only departed from them. This play focuses on the hollow men and variety of human relationships. Vocabulary: irregular plurals. Plural forms of nouns are usually formed by adding s, but there are some irregular ways of forming plurals. Plural forms of the nouns, whether it is Latin or Greek words. Read the following sentence from your text and notice the underlined word. Victoria runs across the Abel and sits on the floor at his feet. The underlined word feet is the plural form of the word foot. This is an irregular plural form. Irregular plurals. As you know, the plural forms of nouns are usually formed by adding s, but there are some irregular ways of forming plurals. Plurals of some Latin words. Examples: datum data, medium media. Plurals of some Greek words. Example: axis, axis, basis, basis. Exclamation or interjunctions. AH, OH, EH, ER, AY, OHO, hist. An interjunction is a word added to a sentence to convey the emotion of happiness, displeasure, anger, annoyance, etc. An interjunction is sometimes followed by an exclamation mark when written. Here are some interjunctions and examples. Let us see some of the examples. Interjunction: ah, well, ah, that feels good. Alas, alas, she's dead now. Dear, oh dear, does it hurt? Eeh. Eeh, really? Hello. Hello, Sindhu. How are you today? Hey. Hey, look at that. Hi. Hi, what's new? Hmm. Hmm. I'm not sure. Oh. Oh, you're here. Ouch. Ouch. That hurts. Ah. Ah. I don't know the answer to that. Ha. Shall we go? Hmm. 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 85 divided by 5 is 17. Compound adjectives. A compound adjective is an adjective that comprises more than one word. Hyphens are used to link the words together to show that they constitute one adjective. Sindhu is very clever-sighted about her choice. Henry and Mrs. Slater stagger in with a pretty, old-fashioned bureau. I'll not be quiet. Oh, I call it a double-faced behavior. Words often confused. There are many such words in English that look or sound alike but have very different meanings. It's easy to get confused with these. Write the meanings of the words that are likely to be confused. Alter, change, modify or amend. Altar, a holy table in a temple or a church. Principal, chief person, major or main. Principle, law, rule, theory, opinion or belief. Gate, walk, step or pace. Gate, entrance, door, opening or gateway. Check, verify, confirm, test. Check, a blank note. Advice, suggestion, guardians, opinion or console. Advice, give suggestions or guidance to somebody. The Brave Potter. The Brave Potter is a very popular Telugu folk tale. It is a humorous story. A potter is the hero of the story. It was a dark evening. It was starting to rain. An old tiger ran through the rain for shelter. The tiger crawled under the thatched roof of an old hut and lay down by the door. It was an old woman's hut which had a leak. When the tiger began to fall asleep, he heard a woman's voice complaining the leak in her hut. It was very terrible. She also complained aloud that she would rather meet a tiger than having the leak in her house. When the tiger heard her words, he thought that the leak was very dangerous and stronger than him. He heard something heavy being dragged inside the hut. While these thoughts were lingering in his mind, he fell asleep. On the afternoon of that day, a potter had drunk more wine and no longer felt tired. The tiger was awakened by an angry voice shouting in his ear. It was the potter's voice. He suddenly remembered that he had left his donkey tied under a tree. He got angry as his donkey was not there where he tied it. He started searching for it. He felt angrier and wanted to beat the donkey when he caught it. He reached the old woman's hut and mistook the tiger for his donkey. He could not notice the difference between a donkey and a tiger as he had drunk. He kicked and bet the slapping tiger. The tiger thought that it must be the leak who came out of the hut. The tiger shivered and frightened and wanted to do as the leak said. So the tiger allowed himself to be bound around the neck with a thick rope. The potter jumped onto the frightened tiger's back, rode it home, and tied it up with the iron chain. The potter jumped onto the frightened tiger's back, then chained to a nearby tree. He went inside the hut. The tiger could not free himself from the chain, so he had to spend a miserable night under the tree. The next morning, the news spread throughout the village that the potter had caught a tiger and tied it to a tree in his yard. All of them praised his courage, showing in catching the tiger. The villagers thanked the potter for catching the tiger. The tiger had eaten many of their goats and buffaloes. They had tried to catch him for many years but had failed. But the potter could not understand how a donkey could change into a tiger. The villagers even praised him for his modesty. A few years later, it was broken out. The enemy army was much stronger. The king was worried how he could save the country. He wanted a brave man to lead the army. One of the ministers told the king about the brave potter. He called for the potter, made him the general of the army, and ordered him to lead the army into battle the next day. But the potter was worrying very much, as he never carried a sword nor had he ever ridden a horse. Hence, he wanted to practice riding the horse. He woke up early the next morning and climbed onto the horse's back with great difficulty. Then he asked his wife to tie his feet to the strips and tied the two strips together. She also tied him to the saddle. Suddenly, the horse jumped free and galloped out of the stable. The potter held to the horse's neck tightly and prayed to all the gods to save his life. Glossary: Thatched, covered with dried straw. Nod off, fall asleep. Muttered, spoke something that cannot be heard. Saddle, a leather seat for a rider on a tree. Hooves, the hard part of the feet of some animals like horses. Reins, long leather bands held by a horse rider to control it. Sentry, guard or a soldier whose job is guard something.